I'll give you a hint. I'm not impressed. This ball of stupid looking sensors, or let's just look at it.
The DAP 3600 is a very advanced machine located 1 mile underground in Snow Lab, Canada. Its main purpose is to detect dark matter, which is tricky to pick up because it does not interact with light or electromagnetic forces. Yet it's
They forget that the dark matter is actually the field. It just is the entire field.
still believed to have powerful gravitational effects in our universe, such as holding galaxies together. So the 3600 carries over 4 tons of cryogenically cooled liquid argon. And when a dark matter
Wow.
particle interacts with an argon atom, it is believed to
You think it's a particle. Wow.
emit ultraviolet light. This light is then detected by
What is this assumption even made? Like, how did you at all?
photomultiplier tubes, which convert it into an electrical signal. And this gives the DAP its unique look. Given its isolated location, it can eliminate a lot of background noise. Thus, it has narrowed down the parameters for this type of detection. Yet, it has not directly discovered dark matter.
What you have basically done is made, and I told you in this comment section, you made a neutron detector. Neutrino detector. Um, you know, the type of stuff that goes through all material and is super fast and usually is picked up by a lot of other things that have fluid in them and make little sparks. Yeah, your little pink sparks are neutrinos, honey. You saw neutrinos. I don't mean to be rude, but we know what neutrinos are. We know how they react and how they make little bits of energetic reactions. I don't know. What did you put in this again? Liquid shit?
Located 1 mile underground in Snow Lab, Canada. Its main purpose is to detect dark matter, which is tricky to pick up because it does not interact with light or electromagnetic forces. Yet it's still believed to have
That's really bold of you to say, because you literally need to interact with matter, and the EM field is the way that you interact with matter. The uh, the thing is, right? And you would. Uh,
powerful gravitational effects in our universe, such as holding galaxies together. So the 3600 carries over 4 tons of cryogenically cooled liquid argon. And
oh, it's liquid argon. Cryogenically cooled. Okay, cool.
when a dark matter particle interacts with an argon atom, it is believed to emit ultraviolet light. This light
I would love to know if you ever, like, have heard of neutrinos or, like, cosmic rays. Because that kind of crap will go straight through, make a little spark with whatever liquid that it goes through, and is um, easily like crazy hard to think of as anything other than what it is. So let me explain to you what dark matter is, because you don't. You have this false assumption that you're going to find it with this. Okay, so liquid argon, okay, If I'm not mistaken, isn't that the type of gas that when you have electrical signal put through the tube, you get an argon um, plasma tube, which is like a neon light, whatever, you know. So here's the thing. Um, that means that in order to, like, what you're seeing is, besides a physical interaction, a slight ignition. I mean, liquid argon, regular argon, gas would ignite anyway. I'm sure if you had enough regular argon gas. Oh, it's inert. Argon gas is literally the inert thing. And yet we're finding a spark. That's curious. Just the physics of this machine itself is like, wait, liquid argon, and then you find it. I mean, you know what's making the sparks, right? Specifically liquid argon, I can imagine, is a more concentrated medium than most liquids. So what you're finding, again, is a cosmic ray, and that cosmic ray is making a streak through the material. If at all, due to it bumping into the electrons as it goes through and making all the materials that are nearby have to move out of the way due to the rapid like bit of the rapid bit of force that you experience for a nanosecond. Um, so let me just clue you in on what dark matter really is. Dark matter is the field. It is everywhere. It is constantly flowing. And forget the term dark matter, just think of the EM field, or think of the Higgs field, if it's a separate thing, right? Which you are not convincing me the Higgs field is separate. And I might be misconstrued about how the EM field really works, but here's the thing, right? We know the effects of the electromagnetic field based off of how it works with electrons and how we end up going from like we know how it works to make electricity, how it works to make light, all of these things. But how does the EM field work on protons? Because we know it works with protons in an atom. And what is everything else made of? Protons. You see, the thing is, the EM field can't have a zero effect on protons themselves, but Compared to what happens with electrons, the effect is minimal. But imagine you had some other kind of specific carrier field. This is not going to be something like a single bit that's going to go through a large pool of items. This is more what you're going to be detecting when you're finding stuff like this is a large stream of motion. And you're going to be finding, like, it's like tides, really. So it's hard to detect because the motion of, like, say, literally the tides is very similar to what you would see in whatever if you're using a liquid to detect it. That's what you're going to notice. The field is literally subatomic. It's not a particle. Or it's, or how do you put it? Subatomic is a stupid word because it literally means atomic, except for quarks, right? But it's below that. So what is the word of that? Besides just quantum. And quantum also means atomic. We don't have words for the EM field proper. Because all we think of is the localized high energy EM field that makes magnetism. The localized, right? But what if you had, like, just a natural sense of all mass, when you group it together enough, makes a gravitational field? It makes a lot more sense that it's actually something else. Not exactly a property of mass, but a property of the universe itself, that there just is matter, energy interaction, but on a bigger scale than classic EM field. You're making electrons orbit protons stuff, which is very localized. But beyond the proton's ability to interact with electrons, protons to other protons, the feeling is not mutual. But the stuff interacting, that material, is still out there, and it's still affecting other protons. In fact, we don't know how protons would react with other protons if given the chance, except for the fact that when the electrons are away, they like to interact. And this was proven by an idiot who made cold fusion. You call him an idiot because Fleischmann literally did the he made he added neutrons to hydrogen without having it be super hot. This process was hoped to make power, but the reality is you just, in a very slow way, did fusion. protons and neutrons of the regular, like you have deuterium, which is the proton-neutron pair, and then you just strip all the electrons away, because if you have electron-heavy material, that's where they're willing to go. That's what he did, right? And then all you have is the neutrons. But then you also have protons in there. So you end up with the byproducts of fusion. You say, oh, we can't explain this or that. And we're hoping for power, but we're not going to make power in this method. But we are going to make helium-free. The byproduct was there. It was obvious. And so, because it's so unlikely that it'll happen, because it's so little result out of your tests, you said, well, this can't be fusion because natural fusion is so energetic. Natural fusion is energetic because you're not stripping away the electrons in a passive way. Because all that motion from the electrons, yeah, that's really the energy. The photoelectric effect, photoelectric effect, shut up, is what happens when you make electrons more or less energetic. The photons, or virtual photons, which turn into photons, which is weird, are emitted when you have the electrons do crazy things. So, with all this other energy involved with standard fusion, literally if you take the electrons away, all you have is the proton-neutrons, very stable material. So all you have is a non-interacting, they're just going to be little balls that are all going to be able to clump together in the basic ways that the material of the shell that you're in, it only allows for the propagation of certain small atomic particles. What if you could take all the electrons off of uranium and then bump it around a bit, and it just makes smaller stuff, and you can do also low energy fission. Now you wouldn't want to do that because it's really hard to make uranium in the first place. Instead, do the opposite. Remake the uranium. And then suddenly you have material that can be regenerated. But no one comes up with these conclusions because they're too focused on making power instead of making matter into new matter. Unlike a chemical reaction, which just moves around the little individual pieces to make molecules, which is super easy, nuclear physics is just about moving the smaller pieces to make an individual segment, which is what an atom really is. It's just a segment. So, again, all to go back on proton interactions. So what's the deal with proton interactions? They don't even. Protons, naturally being supposedly positive, you think it's not a simple yes, no, positive, negative thing. It's not a black and white scale of positivity and negativity here. We're talking about different ways that protons are flowing the EM field through themselves compared to electrons. Because they naturally have this strong nuclear force, right? it do the thing that binds the protons together. It wants to stay close. And do you know why it wants to stay close? Because it's flowing it through itself, and it has more holes than electrons do. So it's able to make, it's like when you have beads and you're able to have more than one string go through them because you have intricate multiple holes beads, you can make tapestries that are a lattice easily because the string is able to go through them in multiple directions. The string, meaning the particles, even smaller than quarks, virtual particles, flowing through them. So you have to understand these particles and everything else. The same thing that is just imagine that the same phenomenon connecting protons to themselves, the same phenomenon that connects, it's because of the shape of the proton that makes the strong nuclear force. It's not the thing moving through it itself that is at fault. It is the shape of the proton. Yeah, protons have shapes, dude. Just like neutrons have a certain shape as well. The thing about neutrons, or we call them neutrons, clearly they seem to not be affected by magnetism, so they must be neutral. The thing about neutrons, right, is they have a very low amount of the ability to have energy go through them, but they might have, like a baseball, channels that go around the outside, round the outside, round the outside. So for protons moving their energy in a very efficient way, which binds and loops around, neutrons having their opposite format, which is like a baseball having those grooves that the energy can flow around, it makes it really easy to make a proton-neutron pair. That's just an intuition. But again, what is the thing stopping a proton? What's the thing stopping an atom from becoming nothing but protons? Well, it's the structure and format of the quarks that they have, right? The point is, there is an interaction between proton and proton. Now imagine if all of the materials that are interacting with protons and everything, that they're also flowing through the atom and flowing towards the electrons, creating this similar connection there. It's breakable because obviously you're able to remove electrons from atoms. We know we can do this. It's so easy. We do it all the time. electrolysis and whatever else. The question is, what happens at a distance with these kinds of fields? Well, the thing is, electrons with the EM field is so powerful. But again, you end up going from the tiny, tight orbit of an electron around a set of proton neutrons, we call it an atom, and you end up with the massive difference in scale, the actual EM field force that we notice, where the EM field is able to make this big old connection to other matter. And so we end up with superconductors with their specific energy amounts. Because of the cold, they are like somehow, like, the interesting thing is the amount of force that goes up through it and down out of it is equal, but it's interesting how when you push it down, it wants to levitate at a specific height. When you pull it up, it wants to go back and levitate at that specific height. So it makes me think that there is a kind of directly proportionate to the magnetic repulsion amount of levitation that you're able to achieve. With these superconductors. But that's everything when you energize it so much with magnetism and direct it so much. But what if you just have regular standard matter? A kilogram of something. Well, there's still an interaction there, isn't there? Because that same carrier is still everywhere. You have to realize the EM field is literally everywhere. It's just it gets excited with matter. So the thing you have to break apart in your head and start learning, pretty sure, is that that field is all throughout space. And it does not have particles associated with it. It's smaller than that. Literally smaller than that. See, virtual particles are everywhere. Not exactly strings. These little bits are just moving all around. And imagine that like you have to imagine in order to do stuff with static electricity and move things around, like you can make static wind, you can push a paper with that. That's not that big of a thing because it takes a lot of power to make static wind. And then like it lifts your hair and everything when there's a lightning strike nearby. But clearly clearly. There's no, like, just random everywhere field, but there is. That's the thing. It just is. So, the illustration on the screen doesn't help your imagination whatsoever. I'm sorry. But the point is, because the field is everywhere, and we know it's everywhere, so it extends. You have to imagine if it's flowing to and from places. But it's on such a vast scale. It's not just. I mean, again, it's something that goes through matter and very lightly interacts with matter. So I don't know why you would ever think that it wouldn't just be this massive micro effect stream, like very weakly affecting energy. I almost refuse to call it particles because it's not particles. It's smaller than that. It's smaller than electrons. It's smaller than neutrons. It's smaller than regular photons. It is possible even smaller. Like, you realize you're when you're working with EM field and you look at a dynamo such as the sun, and you know that the plasma storms on the sun are as crazy, and the energetic bands of EM field are just rapidly jutting out. And it's the size of a planet. You have to wonder, what about less energetic? What about just the standard bit of stuff that we're able to see out there? The reason why I said in my comment, point to Jupiter, literally, if you really want to know, here's the thing. Oh, and there's this funny little thing where they say when the planets align, nothing special happens. Wow, you're dense. No, it totally does happen specially. Imagine you have something flowing from the star. It goes out to Jupiter and it comes back to the star. Right? So you end up with stupid, crazy, dense number of very weakly affecting energy, virtual particles or whatever, you would think that if we ever are lined up so that Jupiter is between us and the sun, that's when you're going to notice dark matter, honey. Because that's when you're going to notice the interacting between two massive bodies doing their thing. And the best way to really detect it, you need multiple detectors throughout the planet. Okay. The way you're going to notice this, and what it really is that as Jupiter lines up with one side of, or most of one, like even a vast distance across, like once it starts edging its way towards lining up as behind us with the sun on the other side, right? The line between Jupiter and the sun starts to line up with our planet. We need sensors all over the planet that notice that interaction. And then as it moves to the other side, right, you have to, like, obviously you have to compensate for the fact that we're spinning. So we need all sorts of sensors like this. And we need one of those events. Clearly that must happen. Planets aligning and everything. Here's the kicker. You don't just need Jupiter. You could use whatever planet you want to use. Jupiter is just a massive effect. The one that does the most. So, compared to the background energy flow of the entire solar system, which is a lot of small strings that go back and forth, essentially, or paths of energy, they're not strings. Don't call them strings. I don't want to get those people hyped up. It's not strings, but flows of energy and that, right? Like the easiest thing that anyone could ever do. Hey, we got the gravity thing going on. What if... Now, here, two things, right? If it is some kind of energy bond interaction between Jupiter, Sun, Jupiter, Sun, Jupiter, Sun, Jupiter, Sun, like it keeps flowing back and forth like that, then you'll notice it real heavy when that alignment happens. Of all the things, I don't know if that ever happens with Earth, being in the middle of that alignment, in that, right? The Sun being here, the Earth being here, and the Jupiter being there. But the reason why I say Jupiter is because it's the easiest thing to notice. It's the biggest effect. But you can do this with any other planet. So if you have, like, I don't know, lunar eclipse, that's a good time. There's some effect there. It's just not as much. But even a lunar eclipse, which we just missed that. Ah, crap. It only happened recently. But imagine you have literally the difference between the moon being at all. Like any full moon will do. I'm not even joking. Full moons will do. That's good enough. So you just have to have it so that when the moon is over there and away from us, the problem is the moon's effect is already obvious. We've got tides and whatever. But gravitational effects and all of that, if you have detectors screening for this energy effect, or if you might as well call it tidal effect, right? You would think Jupiter being aligned would make a very massive tidal effect. But also, if you have the right detectors, you should be able to notice the force carrying whatever it is. The kind of detector it would be is like, it could be like this. I'm not saying it couldn't be like this, but I mean, you're just using it. It really doesn't matter where it is on the planet, because the planet orbits. You get different senses throughout the day of what's happening out there. So that's helpful. So all you have to do is AM, you notice it has something on this side of the planet, or this side of the planet compared to the rest of the solar system. So like, it rotates with let's say Australia facing the direction of the orbit of the sun, right? Why am I pointing that way? Who cares? We got one part of the planet facing the direction as we travel around the sun, right? So then on the night cycle, you can notice it on the other side, because at that point it'll be facing well, technically, because we're skew, it's kind of different, but you can compensate for that in your data, can't you? The point is, again, even lunar cycles are able to give you this tide, and we already know how tide works, so that's a gravitational thing, but it's also an energy. You gotta realize it's a lot of all the energy is in fact, the lunar tide is like, dude, the fact that the tide is such a big thing that we notice a whole bunch of up and down with the waves, that's the kind of magnitude of effect, that's the kind of thing that we want in order to detect dark matter. Right? That's an effect we can even notice. We already have observations of this. So all you need to detect dark matter stuff is when the tide is high in that area, what is going through, what is happening with the material, notice that. And then when the tide is low, what's happening there? And then you'll get a better understanding of, because it's literally gravity doing it, right? So unless it's a different effect that actually makes proper gravity, but this is literally a thing that is not like directly in front of us, right? Works with gravity. Like, Why? That's the thing. Why would you not link up your sensor with times of tides and what do you notice there? Because that's also helpful in everything. Like, why would you not notice that? Why would you not be aware and make that part of the data that you present? Because that's literally gravity doing a thing. So if dark matter is going to do anything, it's when the tide is high, when the tide is low. That's when you're going to notice stuff. That's the difference. It's there or it's not there. Literally noticeable difference. It's almost like it's easy to find dark matter, except for, like, I'm talking about Jupiter. Frickin', we got a frickin' moon. The effect is obvious to literally everyone. The thing is, detecting dark matter during tide moments. Again, it's hard to distinguish, like, natural, just the pull of well, the thing that they think of when they think of the moon and its influence around the Earth is that it has, besides the fact that it's an egg-shaped orbit, so you can get stronger amounts of the moon being aligned with that side of the planet, depending on where it is on that orbit and relative to the planet. And if the orbit changes, then you have different times throughout seasons as well. But this is the thing that you should be paying attention to when you're looking for dark matter, if you're looking for it smartly at all. And it's not mentioned here, you get an F. I think you just made a neutrino detector that's crazy looking. And I'm sorry, you're not going to find dark matter that way, maybe. Or you might. I don't know. But it's not. The problem is looking for these streaks of something. That's not what we're looking for. The dark matter or the EM field is whatever field does gravity. Because it is a field. It's not a particle, it's a field. Because it's everywhere. This field excitation is that it'll become stronger at the start of the tide as the tides are transitioning into being higher. And it'll be weaker when the tides are lower because but you'll never figure this out because you're too focused on the curvature of space-time. But again, if the curvature of space-time has anything to do with anything, you're going to still... It's possible you could have figured it out on your own, that the curvature of space-time and whatever else is also still a field or a particle interaction. But it's not so simple. I mean, it's happening. The effect is worldwide. Depending on where the moon is, or depending on how close the moon is to the Earth, when it is on that side. Like, it will have greater and less effects. Yeah, I would just say start there. Start with the moon. The reason I said Jupiter is because Jupiter is the biggest effect. But we don't, but the moon is a noticeable effect. It's noticeable, it's, um, obvious, and, sorry, the magnitude is so much bigger. But it's just more rare. The moon is just right there. Just line up with that and you'll be fine. Um, I know I sound like a science quack. I don't care. There are a lot of people who say a lot of bullshit on the internet. They are science quacks. At least I'm saying something that, like, come on. If you want to look at a gravity thing, why don't you look at during the gravity events? That's not even quack. That's real. That this thing,